Barry Gibb is 78 years old now, and he's finally telling ethereal story about his brother Andy Gibb. Barry Gibb was born on September 1, 1946 in a place called Douglas on the Isle of Man. He is one of the most famous musicians, singers, and people who write songs in music history. When Barry was just a kid, he was really good at music. His family saw how talented he was and helped him start performing with his brothers, Robin and Maurice. They made a band that became one of the most famous groups in the world, called the Bee Gees. They started small by playing shows in Australia in the 1950s, but they were so good that soon everyone knew who they were. The Bee Gees became super successful in the late 1960s and won 9 7-0s. They were amazing at singing together and helped create a disco sound that everyone loved. Barry had a special high voice called falsetto and became the main singer and songwriter of the group. He helped write lots of hit songs not just for the Bee Gees but for other famous singers too. Songs like Staying Alive, How Deep Is Your Love, and Night Fever became songs that everyone knew, and they made the Bee Gees famous during the Saturday Night Fever time when disco music was everywhere. But Barry wasn't just good at disco music, he wrote songs for lots of different kinds of music. He worked with singers like Barbra Streisand, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Diana Ross, and Dionne Warwick, showing he could write hit songs for pop, country, R&B, and other types of music. Not many songwriters have been as successful as Barry. Barry is known as one of the best songwriters ever. He wrote over 1,000 songs and had hit songs for many years. He was put into the Songwriters Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he made such a big impact on music around the world. While Barry's music career was full of amazing things, his personal life had both happy times and very sad times with his family. The Bee Gees weren't just a band, they were real brothers who loved music together. When his brothers Andy, Maurice, and Robin died, it made Barry incredibly sad because he was the only Gibb brother left alive. In many interviews, he has talked about how hard it is to be the only brother still living. But he has kept going and honors their memory by making sure new people discover their music. His strength and dedication to keeping the Bee Gees' music alive make him someone who never gives up even when life gets really hard. Barry's impact isn't just in the records he made, but also in how he touches the hearts of millions of people in the world. His high falsetto voice became one of the most famous voices in music history, and when he performed on stage, people could see both confidence and warmth. Even after being in the music business for many years, he kept performing with passion, connecting with people who grew up listening to the Bee Gees and with younger fans just discovering their music for the first time. The fact that he kept making music for so long and his timeless songs proved that really great music never goes away. Barry Gibb's personal life, just like his career, has had big moments, dramatic changes, and really important relationships. His first marriage was to a woman named Maureen Bates. He married her on August 22, 1966, when he was only 19 years old. At that time, Barry was still trying to make it as a musician, and he was trying to balance his growing fame with being a grown-up. Their marriage didn't last very long though. Even though they seemed like they wanted to build a life together, their marriage had problems because Barry was becoming famous and life in the spotlight was really hard. They only lived together for a short time, and by July 1970, they got divorced. This first marriage is remembered as an important time in Barry's personal life because it showed how hard it was for young famous people to have a normal relationships during the crazy 1960s pop culture time. It wasn't long after his first marriage ended that Barry met the woman who would become the love of his life. While filming a popular British music TV show called Top of Pops in London, Barry met Linda Gray, who was famous for buying Miss Edinburgh. Barry said meeting her was like magic, and they fell in love quickly. On September 1, 1970, which happened to be his 24th birthday, Barry and Linda got married, starting what has become one of the longest-lasting marriages in the entertainment world. Their marriage has been what kept Barry stable through fame, changes in the music business, and even the heartbreaking loss of his brothers. Together, Barry and Linda didn't just have a marriage, but also built a big-loving family. They have 5 children: Stephen, Ashley, Travis, Michael, and Alexandra. Their oldest son, Stephen Gibb, decided to follow his dad's path by becoming a musician too. He plays guitar and writes songs, and even worked with heavy metal and rock bands, showing that the Gibb family likes many different types of music. Barry is also a grandfather many times over with 7 grandchildren who make him very happy. Barry has often talked about how his wife and children keep him grounded and give him purpose when being famous gets overwhelming. In 2009, Barry and Linda became United States citizens while also keeping their UK citizenship. Having citizenship in both countries showed that Barry still loved his British roots, but also loved the country where most of his adult life and career success happened. By this time, Barry had been living mostly in the United States since 1974, but he still kept a home in the UK to stay connected to where he came from. Barry's personal life also connected with another music superstar, Michael Jackson. In a 2014 interview with the Mirror newspaper, Barry talked fondly about the friendship he had with the king of pop. He said that Jackson would often stay at Barry's house in Miami because he liked the comfort of Barry's family home better than staying in hotels. Barry told stories about Jackson's funny and childlike personality, sitting in the kitchen, watching his fence outside his hotel on TV, and laughing in his famous high-pitched laugh that sounded like hee-hee. He remembered that Jackson even lived upstairs for a while right before his big court case about child abuse charges. Barry was clear that they never talked about the legal problems. Instead, they were friends who worked on music together and hung out. The two would write music together, drink wine, and sometimes drink so much that Jackson would fall asleep on the floor. Barry said really misses Jackson, showing how sad he feels about losing him, not just as a fan of Jackson's music, but as a friend who knew him personally. Houses and property also played an interesting part in Barry's life. In January 2006, he bought one of the most important houses in American music history, the old home of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Barry didn't just want to own the house, but wanted to fix it up and make it into a place where he could write songs, a place where creativity and history could come together. But something terrible happened to the house. While workers were fixing it up in April 2007, the house caught fire and burned down completely, destroying a piece of cultural history. Even though this was really heartbreaking, Barry built a new home on the same land, honoring the place and the musical spirit that had lived there before. Finally, in 2014, he decided to sell the property, ending a chapter that had both dreams and disappointment. At 78 years old, Barry Gibb finally opened up about the real story of his youngest brother, Andy Gibb, in a way he had never done before. For many years, Barry, who was both Andy's older brother and his mentor, had carefully kept his private sadness to himself, instead to celebrate Andy's amazing talent and charm whenever anyone asked about him. Now that he's older and reflection and honesty have become more important than keeping up walls he built to protect himself, Barry let himself speak with reopenness. He talked about the complicated mix of pride, joy, regret, and sadness that had always been part of his relationship with Andy. Andy Gibb was more than just the baby brother of the Bee Gees. To Barry, he was a boy full of light and talent, a naturally gifted singer whose charm seemed effortless. From the moment Andy first started performing, Barry saw brilliance that was as good as what he and his brothers had achieved as a group. When Andy released hits like I Just Want to Be Your Everything and Shadow Dancing, Barry wasn't just his co-writer and producer, he was his biggest supporter, putting his own creative energy into making sure Andy succeeded. In those days, Barry often said Andy was the Gibb with the purest pop voice, a natural-born star who could have been famous around the world for many years. But behind Andy's young smile and love for millions of fans, Barry saw something fragile that few other people noticed. The truth that Barry shared at 78 was that Andy's quick rise to fame came too fast, too young, and without the emotional strength to handle it. Barry admitted that he had worried all the time about his brother's weakness, his need for love, his wanting to be accepted, and the way the pressures of being famous made those insecurities even worse. Andy, he explained, was pushed into the spotlight before he had time to really grow up, and that left him open to the dangerous temptations that came with fame. Barry did not avoid talking about the hardest part of the story, Andy's struggles with drug addiction. For years, Barry had spoken carefully about it, never wanting to make his brother's legacy just a sad story. But in this later reflection, Barry talked about how awful it was to watch Andy fight his inner demons. He described the helplessness of knowing that no matter how much love and support the family gave, Andy could not fully escape the hold that drugs had on him and the emotional problems that came with them. Barry's truth was not about judging Andy, but about deep lasting sadness. Admitted that he had often asked himself if there was more he could have done, if different guidance or being tougher might have saved Andy's life. When Andy died in 1988 at just 30 years old, Barry was devastated. Losing his baby brother was a hurt that never really healed. At 78, he said that even after all the success of the Bee Gees, the awards, the recognition, and the legacy that touched many generations, Andy's absence was like a shadow over everything. Every time Barry performed one of Andy's songs or heard his voice in a recording, it was like time stopped, reminding him of what was lost way too soon. But Barry also shared the truth about the love that continued even after death. He spoke about how Andy stayed alive in memory, in music, and in the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. He carried Andy with him in every song wrote, in every note he sang, and in every stage he performed on. The truth, Barry said, was that Andy was never just the younger brother who didn't get now time. He was an important part of Gibb family's story, someone whose presence shaped their whole lives. At 78, Barry Gibb, the legendary Gees frontman, finally opened up in a honest and heartfelt interview about his younger brother, Andy Gibb, sharing feelings and truths that he had kept private for many years. Looking back on his brother's life, Barry shared, Andy was a shining star, but he struggled in ways that people didn't fully understand. He was full of talent, full of life, but some at times the pressures of fame and the festal around him were too much to bear. The loss of Andy, who died tragically at just 30 years old, had left a mark in Barry's life that would never go away, one that he said only fully understood as time went by. Barry remembered that the day Andy died was just 5 days after his 30th birthday, a day that's would have been a time off celebration, but instead became a time off grief. He remembered with sadness, "We had a fight shortly before his birthday, and I never thought that would be the last time I would see him live. I carry that with me every day." Barry's thoughts went beyond the tragic final moments. He spoke of Andy's charm, his musical genius, and the way he captured audiences with his soulful voice and natural ability to connect with people. Andy had something special, Barry explained, something that could touch hearts easily. People loved him not just for his music, but for who he was, his kindness, his humor, his warmth. But fame can be dangerous both ways, and it's something I wish I could have protected him from more. The conversation also showed Barry's lasting sense of responsibility and guilt as an older brother, feeling she described as both heavy and motivating. "I always tried to guide him, to support him, but sometimes love isn't enough when someone is fighting their own battles," he admitted. Throughout the interview, Barry's words carried both sadness and admiration. He shared personal memories of Andy, moments that showed his brother's playful spirit, his dedication to music, and the deep bond they shared as family. "We were brothers first, musicians second," Barry said. "Music was our language, but it was our family that defined us. Losing Andy so young was like losing a piece of myself, and it's a thing that never truly goes away." Infinitely sharing these thoughts publicly, Barry not only honored Andy's memory, but also gave people a touching look into the human side of the Gibb family, a story of love, regret, and lasting brotherhood. His reflections remind us of both the brilliance and fragility of life, and how even when you're famous and successful, family and connection are the most important things of all. At T78, Barry's words were not simply a revelation about Andy, but proof of how complex family love can be, unconditional, joyful, sometimes heartbreaking, but always eternal. For Barry, telling the truth about Andy wasn't just about setting the record straight. It was about finally giving voice to the love, the pain, and the unspoken memories that had lived inside him for decades.